Plant-based meat is literally a scam. Plant-based meat companies have hijacked our compassion to sell us imitation meat that is made out of a bunch of cheap industrial chemicals and ingredients. Soy protein made from soybeans bathed in a solvent called hexane, a known human neurotoxin.
Hey, what's going on, guys? So there is a new channel that seems like the cousin channel of what I've learned. And what I mean by that is that it's very well edited, yet the information is pure garbage. So we're going to take a look at this channel. It goes by the name of Evil Food Supply, and it's actually relatively new. It's had a pretty good couple first months, but the reason for this is because it's from the bigger YouTuber named Tran. Judging from the rest of this channel's content, I expect that we're going to be seeing much more anti-vegan cringe to respond to in the future. If you look at the rest of the channel, it seems like their primary goal is to expose scams. But what's ironic about this is that if you look at their video description, they're offering what they call a quote, Hustlers University style affiliate program where you spend $300 on something they call a financial slavery masterclass. You end up getting 33% or $100 for every person you convince to waste $300 for this supposed amazing masterclass. Now, I'm not going to be spending $300 in order to determine if this service is a scam, but given the similar affiliate marketing structure this has to Andrew Tate's Hustler University program, plus the creator themselves comparing it to Hustlers University, I can at least say you probably should spend your money elsewhere. And for those who don't know, Hustlers University is what Andrew Tate was selling to his minions online. Now, all that aside, let's get into the video.
Pretty good.
It's very tender, juicy.
I've never had plant taste like beef before.
It's like a beef burger. The flavor on this is outstanding.
Introducing the Impossible Whopper with a patty made from plants, no beef.
No beef, made from plants.
Plant-based meat storms our grocery store shelves.
Now, restaurants are featuring everything from Impossible Burgers to Beyond Sausage breakfast sandwiches on their menus.
But is plant-based meat really healthier for you?
Impossible Burger and companies like that, they use a lot of novel proteins. In other words, things in their meat that we really can't even fully understand.
Biochemistry, it's molecular biology, it's genomics, genetics.
Why are these companies going out of their way to make a non-meat product look, taste, and smell exactly like meat?
So the opening part of the video is just a couple people talking about the Impossible Burger and plant meats in general, followed by a clip from a low-carb family physician named Tony Hampton, who promotes the carnivore diet and has been interviewed on Sean Baker's channel. You know, the guy who claims epidemiological studies are garbage regardless of the result, while he himself cites epidemiological studies to support his view. Or the guy who cites papers on vegan bones and uses pictures of weak non-vegan bones and falsely represents them as vegan bones. So with that, we can gather that he is a very valuable source of information. Anyway, he says that Impossible Foods uses novel proteins that we can't understand. Now, let's ignore the fact that no evidence was provided for this claim and Impossible Meat's past defense of these kinds of criticisms on Twitter. I find it a bit ironic that Tony would be so concerned with the quote, unknown in regard to proteins while promoting a diet such as the carnivore diet with no evidence supporting it outside of unverified anecdotes online, and that joke of a study riddled with an unbelievable amount of issues. Pause now to read what those issues are. The introduction clip also contains the question, why are these companies going out of their way to make a non-meat product look, taste, and smell exactly like meat? Now, I think the obvious answer is going to be that the creators of this product see a demand for it and hence are creating it. What a crazy concept. Business. Wow. Also, notice the question is framed as a kind of gotcha. Like, oh, why would you make a non-meat product look and taste like meat? This seems contradictory. Now, obviously, it's possible to have a desire for a taste while simultaneously opposing the typical means by which we obtain the taste. This isn't really the gotcha that it seems to be. If one can obtain the taste of meat from a product without meat's typical ethical and environmental implications, one is going to opt for that product. Here's what I think the real question is. Why do consumers want to eat something that tastes and feels like meat that is not meat? And the answer is going to vary based on the consumer. Some may want meat without the typical ethical concerns, the environmental concerns, and there can even be religious reasons. Let's keep watching.
Plant-based meat is literally a scam. They say it's about having empathy for animals.
You know what the animals would say to you if they could speak? Don't kill me! Where'd my tooth go?
They say it's for the environment.
Climate change is exploiting the world's land at an unprecedented rate.
Eating more plant-based foods and sustainably produced meats can change land use and mitigate climate change.
They say it's healthy.
I'm more active. I'm not as sluggish.
It takes less water, less energy.
When in reality, it's all about money.
All right, so we have mind reading abilities from Jake Tran. He says that, quote, they say that fake meat is about compassion for animals, helping the environment, and improving people's health, when in reality, it's just about money. Now, no evidence was provided for this claim, and not to mention, we don't really know who the fuck they is, but in the case that he is talking about the manufacturers of fake meats, it's totally possible for one to have a desire to generate profit and produce a product that is better for animals, the environment, and our health than the product that it is seeking to replace.
Plant-based meat companies have hijacked our compassion to sell us imitation meat that is made out of a bunch of cheap industrial chemicals and ingredients.
More mind-reading abilities and claims without evidence. Let's keep going.
Soy protein made from soybeans bathed in a solvent called hexane, a known human neurotoxin.
Alrighty guys, many problems here. First off, this article is from 2010, so it couldn't possibly be about Impossible Meat or Beyond Meat, which are the main meats of concern in this video. And if you continue reading his source, it literally says, how worried should soy foodies be? Maybe a tiny bit, but only because of the lack of data. It's odd that he didn't choose to highlight this detail as well in his showing of the article, probably because it would make for a much less scary narrative. He also fails to mention that the article talks about hexane in fish protein isolate too. But remember, this video is meant to solely demonize plant meat, so we're just gonna ignore that. Let's continue to read a little more into his source, because as I continue to read it myself, it became more and more clear that he didn't read it himself. In reference to the process by which hexane gets into soy foods, the article says, quote, the government has no evidence that this process is unsafe for consumers. And check out the last paragraph of the article. The few rodent studies that have been done suggest it would be difficult to get enough hexane from your grocer's natural food section to harm yourself, at least in the short term. Scientists fed about 500 milligrams of hexane to lab rats for 90 days and found no adverse effects. Even if veggie burgers were to lose none of the volatile hexane during cooking, it would take more than 353,000 veggie burgers a day to reach that level, adjusted for human body weight. At 2,000 milligrams of the solvent over the 90-day period, the rats started to show some neurological problems. That's about 1.4 million veggie burgers per person per day. The reports do not consider whether the experimental rats might be more susceptible to long-term problems. So it seems that all Jake did was read the first couple lines of the article. Amazing. What he is doing here is very similar to what other people online do, where they fearmonger about chemicals in plant-based meats or products in general. They don't take into account dosage and instead fearmonger about a chemical in and of itself. This is very stupid, especially in regard to nutrition, because dose basically always matters. This applies to sodium, saturated fat, and other nutrients. So what we can gather from the article that Jake cited is that I shouldn't be consuming 1.4 million veggie burgers per day that are made from soy. I'm really appreciative of this information because I actually just started eating 1.4 million veggie burgers per day. So Jake Tran, thank you so much for the insight. And here's something crazy, and we're gonna see more and more of this as the video goes on. The video he shows while discussing hexane was from a video on how bacon is made. It was a curing solution that's injected into the pork belly.
The pork bellies now pass under an injector head. Its needles repeatedly inject a curing solution into each pork belly.
Why would he show this video when trying to show hexane or demonize plant-based meats?
Red number 3, food dye that's a carcinogen that's banned in cosmetics.
So I couldn't find red 3 in either Beyond Meat or Impossible Meat, but it should be noted that pomegranate fruit powder and beet juice extract are used for color in the Beyond Burger. Regardless, this is just another example of Jake fear-mongering about ingredients without talking about dosage. Also, The video he used to show red number 3 was from the same video covering how bacon is made, not vegan meat. The video even called it liquid smoke and other flavorings, so it's not even clear that red 3 is what we're looking at in the video.
Then, liquid smoke and other flavorings are added.
Caramel coloring, a dye that causes cancer in rats.
Again, I don't know where caramel coloring is being used in plant-based meats. It's not being used in Beyond Meat, and it's not being used in Impossible Meat. I did end up finding it and red 3 in Morningstar bacon, but this isn't even a vegan product. It's vegetarian. Jake also seems to not understand how low preclinical or animal studies are on the evidence hierarchy. We are not rats. Does Jake also think that mangoes are not healthy for us because they contain D-limonene, which is toxic to rats? Is Jake's next video going to be mangoes are literally a scam? And I'm also discovering that the clip on the right is from the same bacon video as before. Amazing.
Tertiary butyl hydroquinone.
Okay, so both of these videos are from Hot Dog Creation Videos from the How It's Made official YouTube channel. These are not videos on plant-based meat. I'm not sure why he's making this video on plant-based meat while continuing to show footage of meat being processed. Not to mention that this isn't even tertiary butyl hydroquinone. It's corn syrup.
Corn syrup adds a dash of sweetness.
And again, which plant-based meat contains this? It's not clear which one he's talking about, and as usual, he fails to mention anything related to dosage, which the FDA does monitor in regards to tertiary butyl hydroquinone.
Sodium tripolyphosphate. Yum!
Oh, it just gets better, guys. He is showing a video of a real meat processing plant from 1965 while trying to show sodium tripolyphosphate being used for plant-based meat.
And the meat moves to the hopper of the stuffing machines.
Amazing. And the video makes no mention of sodium tripolyphosphate.
These are just some of the ingredients found in plant-based meat.
Guys, let's remember the title of this video. Plant-based meat is literally a scam. This man just concluded his listing of chemicals in plant-based meat by saying, quote, "These are some of the ingredients in plant-based meats," while showing footage of real meat, not plant-based meat. And not to mention that the ingredients he was talking about weren't even being used in these videos.
Ingredients that are absolutely terrible for you and are way cheaper than growing grass-fed cows, which we've been eating for hundreds of thousands of years.
No, we haven't. These cows have been artificially selected. The cows we eat today, grass-fed or not, are not the same types of cows our ancestors ate hundreds of thousands of years ago. This is just a false claim.
And yet, society keeps pushing it.
And it continues to get worse. Here we go. He says society keeps pushing it, and by it, he's referring to plant-based meat. And he does this while showing footage of pickled pig feet in jars from 1965. How can he continue to keep doing this while making a video that is meant to expose scams? His video is the scam.
Hormel pig's feet are delicacy items. The front feet from all the pigs Hormel buys are used in the manufacture of this product. Pickled pig's feet are very tasty and attractively packaged too.
Governments keep pushing it, and we all fell for it. This is the great plant-based meat lie.
Again, how could he say this while formulating the video in the way that he did? His video is the lie.
Well, those Impossible Burgers, we showed a study the other day that was showing that it's toxic for rats. They fed rats the Impossible Burger and the rats are getting sick.
He goes on to cover a Joe Rogan clip I covered before, and we're going to talk about rats and mangoes again. Here it is. But Joe Rogan citing data showing that a particular food item is toxic to rats as evidence that a particular food item is toxic to humans is incredibly silly. D-limonene is derived from the peels of citrus fruits and can be found in mangoes. Dosing it orally to male rats can induce nephrotoxicity. Does this mean that human males should not be consuming mangoes now? Maybe it hasn't occurred to Joe Rogan that human beings are not rats. You know, after covering all of the bullshit in this video, it seems like Jake should be hired by all of these terribly evil and malicious companies.
Plant-based meat is actually a food manufacturer's dream. Why? Think about it. Raising a natural grass-fed cow takes a ton of time, money, and resources. You need to feed them quality hay and grass. You need to take care of them for up to 2 years. And this all costs money. Over $2,000 per cow. That is why grass-fed beef costs food manufacturers $7.63 per pound. Pretty expensive. Now, compare this to the plant-based meat, which is made from America's cheapest, most subsidized crop, soybeans. Right now, soybean meal costs American food manufacturers a measly 25 cents per pound, compared to $7.63 for beef. That's 30 times cheaper than real meat. Which means, if you could find a way to make a convincing beef-like burger with this dirt-cheap soybean meal, you could charge the same price as real beef while making way more profit. All you need is some genius marketing, some colorful labels, a little dash of guilt, and you will be golden.
So Jake makes zero mention of the government subsidies that animal agriculture gets to compensate for how inefficient and resource intensive animal products are. But let's ignore them like Jake did and pretend there is no subsidies assisting animal agriculture. Yeah, animal products are super resource intensive, especially grass-fed beef. Plants are going to be less resource intensive because we eat them directly as opposed to filtering them through an animal to sell their meat. Anybody interested in saving resources and money who wants to start manufacturing food is probably going to want to go with the option that doesn't entail getting 10% of the calories you put into an animal back in the form of animal products you can sell. This is quite obvious.
And that's exactly what happened. Right now, grass-fed ground beef at the grocery store costs $7.99 to $10.49 per pound. While Impossible Foods' fake ground beef, this cheap soy frankenmeat costs around the same at $9.32 per pound.
To be honest, without government subsidies, grass-fed beef would be far more expensive than it is now and wouldn't compete at all with Impossible meat. And this is of course because of what Jake mentioned earlier, which is how resource intensive grass-fed beef is.
This is the Impossible Burger. A plant-based meat alternative made from the best, most natural ingredients America has to offer.
Here, what we have in front of me is all of those natural plant ingredients.
Yeah. And honestly, the Impossible Burger doesn't taste half bad.
The consistency of the Impossible Burger is so meat-like.
It's shocking. It's literally shocking.
It grills like a burger. It bleeds like a burger. But how does it do that? Well, the chemical in real beef that makes it taste super delicious is called heme. Heme is a chemical found in cow's blood. So if you want your plant-based meat to taste like the real thing, you're gonna need to find a plant-based heme alternative. So you slapped on a lab coat and started experimenting. You wanted to find a way to extract the chemical heme from soybeans. And at first, you experimented on natural, non-GMO soybeans. But the taste just wasn't cutting it. Plus, in order to make a tiny bit of heme, you needed a whole truckload of these natural soybeans, which would be super expensive and ruin the whole point of this scheme. So you switched gears and started to experiment with genetically modified soy. And guess what? It actually worked. You literally created blood from soybeans.
Impossible Burger is a plant-based burger. The key ingredient, which a protein called soy leg hemoglobin.
But the thing about genetically modified soy is that it's sprayed with a ton of herbicides, specifically Monsanto's Roundup. And this Roundup contains a toxin called glyphosate, which has been linked to vital organ damage in animals, as well as cancer and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in humans. And as it turns out, glyphosate gets absorbed right into the flesh of the soybeans that it's sprayed on. So it's not surprising that a ton of glyphosate has been found in Impossible Burgers.
So his source for this is from a nonprofit called Moms Across America, which is just hilarious, very academic and scholarly. And of course, there's no talk of dosage and health outcomes to be found here. Jake continues to fearmonger over ingredients and not discuss dosage and its effect on health. If this is such an issue, it should be very easy for Jake to provide some health outcome data on humans consuming GMO soy with glyphosate. But of course, he doesn't. He just continues to fearmonger about ingredients. When looking further into that, glyphosate is probably a carcinogen claim I found this. For the herbicide glyphosate, there was limited evidence of carcinogenicity in humans for non-Hodgkin lymphoma. The evidence in humans is from studies of exposures, mostly agricultural, in the USA, Canada, and Sweden, published since 2001. In addition, there was convincing evidence that glyphosate also can cause cancer in laboratory animals. On the basis of tumors in mice, the United States Environmental Protection Agency, or the US EPA, originally classified glyphosate as possibly carcinogenic to humans in 1985. After re-evaluation of that mouse study, the US EPA changed its classification to evidence of non-carcinogenicity in humans in 1991. The US EPA Scientific Advisory Panel noted that the re-evaluated glyphosate results were still significant using 2 statistical tests recommended in the IARC preamble. The IARC working group that conducted the evaluation considered the significant findings from the US EPA report and several more recent positive results in concluding that there is sufficient evidence of carcinogenicity in experimental animals. Glyphosate also caused DNA and chromosomal damage in human cells, although it gave negative results in tests using bacteria. One study in community residents reported increases in blood markers of chromosomal damage, micronuclei, after glyphosate formulations were sprayed nearby. So what does this all mean? It says these exposures were mostly agricultural. In other words, people working in agriculture spraying, breathing in, and being surrounded by glyphosate all day. This evidence was not in people consuming small amounts of glyphosate in GMO soy. And still, the evidence was considered limited, with much stronger evidence suggesting carcinogenicity in experimental animals rather than humans. This is another reminder of the importance of dosage and context. His Moms Across America article claimed to have found 11.3 parts per billion of glyphosate in Impossible meat. With what we just read, what reason do we have to believe that eating Impossible burgers will lead to an effect equal to or worse than spraying, breathing in, and being surrounded by glyphosate all day? And here's just another example to understand the point I'm trying to make. B12 supplements containing cyanocobalamin literally contain cyanide, but the dose is so low as to not be anything near harmful for us. If I was Jake Tran, I could make a video on B12 supplements being a scam and say, look, you shouldn't take cyanocobalamin because it contains cyanide. And here's a review of pesticide exposure and cancer incidence in the agricultural health study cohort. This paper included glyphosate and found no association between all cancers. How are people like Jake worried about GMO soy and low intake of glyphosate in regard to cancer when we can't find an association between people being exposed to glyphosate all day and incidence of all of these cancers? You can pause the screen right now.
But did this little glyphosate mishap stop you from releasing your burger to the public? No! You submitted a 1,066-page report on your soy-like hemoglobin creation to the FDA. And the FDA simply responded with no further questions.
So for whatever reason, Jake decides to mention the 1,000+ page report on soy-like hemoglobin, but doesn't go over it. So I'll do that for you instead. Here's the results. I covered it in a previous video on his cousin, what I've learned. It said there was no mortalities, clinical observations, ophthalmology, body weight gain, food consumption, or food efficacy changes attributable to like a hemoglobin prep administration for either sex. Additionally, there were no test substance-related changes in hematology, serum chemistry, or urine analysis parameters for males or female rats. And if you want, you can pause now and read the rest, but pretty much nothing substantiates what they said. And you can read these too. Pause now. What I find odd is that Jake is so quick to report mouse study data when it supports his narrative, but when it doesn't, he decides to just not say anything. He'll just mention the study as if it was something bad, not cover the results, and then just continue with his video. It's almost like Jake enjoys picking and choosing what to report based on how much it supports or doesn't support his narrative.
One of the ingredients in Impossible burgers is ferric phosphate, an ingredient that is promoted as an iron supplement, but is also the active ingredient in slug pesticide.
We're not slugs. Crazy. Slugs also die when you pour salt on them. Does this mean that Jake thinks humans will die when we pour salt on them? Amazing.
But there's still one crucial thing missing that makes a burger, that satisfying sizzle. And where does that sizzle come from in real meat? Natural animal fat. We can't use that here. So what do? You dump in a ton of seed oils. Sunflower oil, canola oil, corn oil, you don't discriminate. And guess what? Just like soybeans, these seed oils are crazy cheap. And they're plant-based, score! And the great thing is that the masses still think vegetable oils are healthy, when in reality, they're also absolutely horrible for you. and have been linked to heart disease, liver damage, and cancer.
Okay, the whole seed oils thing, as per usual, I'm just gonna point to Nutrivore's hyper-extensive article on the topic. If I read the whole thing in this video would be significantly longer, so just go ahead and click the link in the pinned comment, or the description, sorry, and you can go ahead and read it. The seed oil stuff just needs to go at this point. Let's also just remind ourselves that Jake has provided zero health outcome data on these plant-based meats. He has just fear-mongered over ingredients that may or may not be in these products while showing footage of animal products being processed. Here's an actual paper comparing the health outcomes of plant-based meat and real meat, and to be clear, all of the plant-based meat was supplied by Beyond Meat, which is one of the companies he was condemning in his video. I've covered the results of this paper in another video, so here is that video. There was a randomized crossover trial comparing plant meats to real meat. Participants went 8 weeks consuming 2 or more servings of plant-based meat per day, and then repeated the process with animal-based meat. All foods outside of the plant or animal meat during these phases were kept similar. It was found that those consuming the plant products improved several cardiovascular disease risk factors, including TMAO, and there was no adverse effects on risk factors from the plant products. While there certainly should be more long-term studies comparing the intake of plant-based mock products and the animal foods they aim to replicate, the results of this study certainly conflict with Dave Asprey saying that you shouldn't eat anything that is a fake replacement for something animal-based. It's so easy to say things like, oh, the chemicals, it's so processed, there's random oils, there's this and that. But when you look at the actual evidence, takes like this seem quite silly. All right, guys, well, that was fun. You know, I thought I was done with what I've learned after my 2-parter in debunking him, but then out of nowhere, this video comes out and I'm like, wow, this editing is so good. I wonder if the information is going to be trash. And guess what? It was. Wow, very surprised. Anyway, so thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy my work and want to get early access to it, you can click the link in the pinned comment and support me on Patreon. And that comes with one-on-one messaging. So if you care about that too, you can also sign up. And if you don't know, I do have a book going over most, if not all, of the anti-vegan arguments you're going to hear online. If you want to get that as well, that'll be linked in the pinned comment. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
Dude, fuck off. I don't want anything to do with you. Don't ever speak to me again. You're a fucking piece of shit.
Even vegans don't get your weird, stupid wannabe sense of irony here. Who is your audience? Nobody gets these dumb jokes. Dude,